Now that we have addressed so many of the ins and outs of your own feeding insecurities and anxieties, as well as your child's, and the approaches you may have historically been using versus those in the future that we would like to adopt, I want to begin looking at what our homework is for the week. I know everything at the beginning can be very overwhelming, particularly because this week's modules were longer than expected and might have been a real whirlwind or revelation to a lot of you. So when you begin looking at how to best to start in the academy, I've done the best I can to try and think through how to lay out systematically how to approach the division of responsibility in your family, no matter where you're at right now. Some of you might already have been adopting the division of responsibility and be ready to take a little bit more action. For some of you, this might be a totally new and unfamiliar approach, and you need to go a little bit slower so your children and you aren't in as much shock when things begin to change. While the changes will be positive and productive moving forward, that doesn't mean that it's bad if you're met with some initial resistance, either from your child, a spouse, or even yourself, just realizing that this is a new approach and is requiring some new attention and energy to be put into it. So to start, I encourage you to continue to self-reflect on your own feeding anxieties and your own eating competence. As I referenced, the Ellen Satter has a validated tool that can be an excellent way for you to help evaluate where your own eating competence falls. I'm not going to include this in a workbook due to copyright, but I will include the link in the resource list on this week's module. I encourage you to go ahead and take that just for a little bit better understanding of where you yourself or your spouse or partner are coming at things from when it comes to the feeding relationship and your own eating competence. Next, something I have included in this week's download from the Academy Notebook is a list of conversation starters. If you feel like you need to be having these conversations, which honestly, even myself included, can be beneficial to have with your partner, your spouse, fellow caregivers of your child, it can be helpful to have a list of questions to begin generating a conversation around how you're feeding your family and where maybe some changes need to have. I encourage you to download this from the Academy Notebook and to begin to chat through some of these conversations with those involved in also feeding your child. Next, I encourage you to consider where you're currently at. Look at the feeding tip sheet and see how many of these are already natural, normal, routine parts of your daily life. I wouldn't expect 7 out of 7 to be there. That's why you're in the academy. But my goal for you throughout the time in the academy is to work through each of these. So by the end of the academy, each of these are things that you feel competent and confident in with your feeding relationship. If right now the only thing that's familiar for you is step 1, being to stick to the division of responsibility, that is your goal in your practice for this week. Just begin working with where you are currently at, offering what you currently are offering, doing no different thing, offering no new menus, such as those that are in the email for those who are interested in using them, and just stick to what you are currently doing and practice the division of responsibility with what you know already works and is already normal and routine for your family. Then in the upcoming weeks, you'll begin to see how I help you figure out what to feed, scheduling when to feed, deciding where to feed, planning family meals with everyone in mind, including kids in the kitchen, and removing that agenda to eat. All of that will come. But right now, focus on where you currently are at and what you're currently ready for. Again, setting yourself up with proper expectations and rational, reasonable next steps for where you can best move forward without overwhelming yourself or your family. Next, I want you to begin communicating with your child. Chances are you've been feeding a certain way, and this is going to be a big shift. I think it's important for us to bring our children into that conversation. And even though we're the lead on this, and we get to take leadership and begin to lead this force for a new feeding foundation or family with the division of responsibility, reach out to your child and reiterate to them what their role is and what your role is. Try and adjust this as we can do through the Q&A if you have specific examples, but adjust this to what your child's age and feeding stage is. If they're younger, obviously your language will be a little bit more simple. If they're older, you might be able to use a little bit more advanced language to communicate to them what shifts are going on. But what I want you to begin to think is that you can respect your child's role simply by engaging them and letting them know what to expect in this process. I've given you some what to say when script suggestions in this week's notebook. These aren't necessarily all ones that you will be using this week, but for the upcoming 8 weeks, I would like you to have these as a resource for you or your spouse or other caregivers to reference. This helps you understand how to respond to typical questions that come up or typical comments that kids make and how you could best respond in a way that aligns with the division of responsibility. This will take practice. This will not be something that automatically spews from your lips the first time your child says something or does something that you don't know how to react to. The aim here is that I want you to begin to work through this division of responsibility and practicing. I've outlined this more on this week's module of some of the ways that you can do this, but I think the most important thing that you can do to start is to reach out to your child and to let them know, hey, things haven't been as pleasant at meal times or at snacks as I would like. And as your parent, it's important to me that we enjoy time together around the table. So from now on, we're going to start doing things a little bit differently. Here's what that's going to look like. Mom or dad or whoever you are speaking is going to be in charge of what food we offer, when we get to eat, and where we eat. What I want you, little one, or big one, or however you want to address your child, what I want you to get to do is I want you to tune into your body. I want you to listen to what your body needs, and I want you to know that you get to decide what goes in your mouth. We're not going to pressure. We're not going to bribe. I don't want it to feel tense at the table anymore. I just want to enjoy my meal times with you, and I'm really excited for us to get to work as a team and to be a part of that together. That's it. Just tee it up for them to know that things are going to be beginning to shift. As things begin to shift, you can do some more visual cues if it's helpful. You might begin using table placemats instead of not. You might begin using some sort of a visual cue to transition, which we'll talk about more in week 3 as we go over the feeding environment. But right now, as you ease into this and as you as the adult wrap your head around things, I want you to begin thinking about how you can communicate this to your child to show that you're being accountable to adopting a new approach and that you want to involve them in that process. I hope that these script suggestions will be helpful for you in the weeks to come, and I hope that this week's homework will help empower you and encourage you to take the next best step.